Welcome back to Philo Thoughts, where we dissect the deepest ideas hidden within the stories we love. Today, we're cutting into the absurd, tragic existence of Denji, the Chainsaw Man. We're going beyond the gore to ask, why is a life of simple desire so brutally difficult to attain? Get ready to explore the philosophy of the utterly basic. The superhero genre is full of characters fighting for grand concepts, peace, justice, or the fate of the world. But then there is Denji, a boy whose entire philosophical compass is pointed at the most basic, deeply human, and often tragic desires: a warm meal, a soft bed, and the fleeting chance to hold a girl's hand. He is the Chainsaw Man, the terrifying, world-altering primal force of fear. Yet his goals are pathetically, painfully simple. This colossal gap between his power, cosmic, existential, and his wants, mundane, physiological, is the central tragedy of his existence. This video argues that Denji, the living embodiment of tragedy, is a profound philosophical statement on modern existence. His life is an unrelenting comedy of errors and tragedies that constantly deny him his most basic needs. We will explore how his journey, from a debt-ridden orphan to a weaponized human-devil hybrid, is a brutal look at apathy, trauma, and the high cost of yearning for a normal life in an absurd and terrifying universe. The moment he fused with Pochita, Denji became an agent of absolute cosmic potential. Yet he remained trapped by the poverty and the profound lack of simple human connection that defined his past. His life is a continuous, agonizing proof that power does not equal happiness, and that the simplest desires, the ones that truly define human comfort and peace, are the hardest to secure. Every time he is forced to transform, he is reminded that his true self is something terrifying and abnormal, making the dream of normal life an agonizing impossibility. Denji's relentless pursuit of the normal is, in essence, a fierce critique of society itself. The manga suggests that normality is not a natural state, but rather a carefully guarded luxury denied to those who are marginalized. His struggle to prove he deserves something as simple as a family or romance lies at the heart of his tragedy. The world demands that he be a monster and a tool, but his childlike soul desperately craves a place in society that refuses to accept him, except as a disposable weapon. The trauma of utility, when love is a contract. Denji's life is defined by a grim truth. He is useful, but not truly loved. The trauma of his childhood, where his worth was measured in yen and organs, has sculpted a philosophy where all relationships are ultimately transactional. He does not understand genuine affection, he only understands contracts, incentives, and coercion. Makima is the embodiment of this tragedy, offering him the illusion of family and comfort in exchange for his absolute servitude. This section of the script is a sharp critique of how society values people based on their utility. Denji is constantly used, by Makima, by public safety, and even initially by power and Aki, because his power is a means to an end. The manga explores the profound pain of this utilitarian existence. The moment Denji has to fight, not to save the world, but to maintain his value in the eyes of his master, his quest for normalcy is therefore a search for a non-contractual relationship, one where he is loved simply for being himself, and not for the chainsaw engine in his chest. His inability to feel true love, often confusing it with biological satisfaction, is the direct result of being constantly treated as a tool, making his life a tragic meditation on the price of being valuable, yet never truly human. Furthermore, Denji's tragedy lies in the fact that every time he is offered a semblance of happiness, it comes with a hidden, brutal cost attached to the contract. The warmth of a relationship is used as a lever to control him, and the promise of a normal life is the bait to ensure his obedience. This continuous cycle prevents Denji from developing a robust, independent sense of self-worth. His self-esteem remains tethered to his utility, reinforcing the trauma that he is only worthwhile when he's performing a function, making his desire for normalcy not just sad, but existentially compromised.
The tragedy of identity, the monster behind the simple desire. Denji's primary philosophical struggle is an internal one. the conflict between his human self and the Chainsaw Man. His search for a normal life is constantly thwarted by the reality that his very existence is inherently abnormal and terrifying. Every time he is forced to transform, he sacrifices a piece of the mundane life he desperately craves. The ultimate tragedy of his identity is that the source of his power, Pochita, and the reason he is sought after is the exact thing that makes him permanently incompatible with his dreams. He wants to be Denji, the simple boy, but the world demands the Chainsaw Man. This duality creates a profound sense of alienation. He is constantly alienated from himself, as his human side tries to suppress the terrifying reality of his monstrous core. This internal conflict is Chainsaw Man's critique of the hero archetype. Denji doesn't fight because he is noble, he fights because he is coerced by his needs and the manipulative contracts of others. The violence he unleashes is not a heroic act of salvation, but a necessary, brutal step toward a soft bed or a shared kiss. His monstrous nature is the price he pays for the right to pursue normalcy, ensuring that he remains trapped in a perpetual state of trauma, where every victory is also a defeat for his human soul. The forced separation between Denji and Chainsaw Man speaks to a broader existential problem: the impossibility of living authentically when your identity is constantly being defined by external forces and extreme trauma. He struggles to discern his own genuine desires from the programmed desires instilled by his controllers, especially Makima, leading to a crisis of self. His greatest fear is not death, but the dissolution of the simple human self he is fighting so hard to preserve, making the Chainsaw Man a philosophical obstacle to his own happiness. The paradox of oblivion: happiness through amnesia. The cruelest irony in Denji's life lies in the very nature of his power. The Chainsaw Man has the ability to permanently eradicate devils, and therefore concepts, from existence. Philosophically, this establishes a devastating paradox. The power to erase the world's memory is directly linked to his struggle to create his own human memories. Makima exploits this dichotomy, attempting to remove Denji's painful memories to make him more malleable. His pursuit of happiness, ironically, often requires him to sever and suppress his own traumatic experiences and deepest connections, such as his relationship with power. The manga suggests that emotional stability and normalcy might only be achieved through a degree of forced amnesia or emotional apathy. Denji's power is not just a weapon, it is an existential mirror. He can erase the collective memory of fears, but he cannot erase the personal memory of his own pain and trauma. This means his greatest global strength is useless against his greatest individual burden, trapping him in a cycle where the world is saved, but his soul remains eternally fractured. This philosophical conflict highlights the immense gap between cosmic power and internal peace. The Chainsaw Man is a force of ultimate existential finality, a power that can definitively end fear, yet Denji, the human component, remains utterly powerless over his own emotional past. The only way he can truly move forward is by choosing to forget or simplify, thereby engaging in a continuous internal battle to make his memory as basic and uncomplicated as his desire for a simple life. The cost of being the world's savior is the permanent denial of his right to a complex, fully remembered human identity.
The adoption of the mask, Denji, and the act of being Chainsaw Man. For Denji, the act of being the Chainsaw Man evolved from a mere contract into a social mask. After being freed from Makima's manipulation, he actively attempts to embody the public's idea of a hero, not out of altruism, but because fame and public adoration are, ironically, the easiest path to achieving his desired normal life, which includes popularity, attention, and a consistent food supply. This segment focuses on the philosophy of identity performance. Denji is not living authentically, he is acting out the role of a hero in a desperate bid to fulfill his basic biological and social needs. His struggle shifts from being the Chainsaw Man to performing as the Chainsaw Man. The tragedy here is that by embracing the public mask, he risks losing sight of what little remains of his simple inner self, the Denji who just wanted a sandwich and a hug. The manga, therefore, delivers a critique of authenticity.
Can Denji truly achieve happiness if his most human identity is constantly sacrificed in favor of his public, violent, and useful persona? His life becomes an endless cycle of performance, where he can never truly let his guard down and simply be Denji. This performance is a survival mechanism born from trauma. By internalizing the public's simplified, useful image of Chainsaw Man, Denji tries to provide his fractured self with a stable, socially acceptable framework. He adopts the mask because the alternative, having a messy, complicated, and vulnerable real identity, has only led to pain and manipulation. This self-imposed requirement to perform the hero reinforces the utilitarian nature of his existence, proving that even in his freedom, he is still enslaved by the need for external validation to define his worth. Furthermore, Denji's mask highlights the hypocrisy of the public. They adore the simplified, powerful idea of Chainsaw Man, but they would instantly reject the vulnerable, hungry, and sexually awkward boy underneath. The character is forced into a tragic loop where he must maintain the terrifying persona to secure the simple human goods, comfort, safety, that the public's fear indirectly provides him. He is a philosopher of necessity, showing that sometimes the only way to get a piece of the good life is to become the spectacle that society demands. Freedom versus contract, the search for free will. Denji's life is an endless series of contracts ranging from his pact with Bochita to the forced arrangements with Makima and public safety. This reality raises the central philosophical question of free will. Chainsaw Man never seems to act from a purely autonomous choice, but rather in response to a basic need, food, sex, security, that has been leveraged by someone else. This segment analyzes Denji as a critique of determinism, the idea that our actions are determined by external forces. Though he possesses immense power, his will is constantly being shaped by past trauma, current manipulation, and his most basic biological instincts. His struggle for normality is in reality a fight to find a space of genuine freedom where he can desire something not as a byproduct of manipulation, but as a byproduct of genuine mundane desires. Ultimately, Denji's tragedy is that his freedom is always measured by its price. His only way to exercise free will is by breaking the contract, an act that typically requires extreme violence of the destruction of something he worked hard to build. His quest for freedom is a vicious cycle. He uses his strength to break free from control, only to fall under a new contract, highlighting the fragility of autonomy in a cruelly transactional universe. The series uses Denji's plight to argue that true freedom is the freedom from necessity. The powerful figures in his life exploit his poverty and his basic human needs, effectively reducing his free will to a calculation of survival. He is forced to choose between two bad options: obedience for comfort or destruction for momentary self-assertion. The core philosophical challenge of Chainsaw Man is whether Denji can ever achieve a state where his actions are driven by genuine, unmanipulated desires and not by the desperate, traumatic need for a simple meal or a roof over his head. This tragic state of constant negotiation reveals that in Denji's world, power does not equal agency. He may be the most feared entity, but he remains one of the least self-directed. His immense strength only makes him a more valuable commodity in the transactional hierarchy of the world. Denji is thus the anti-hero of free will, a being of unlimited cosmic potential whose personal autonomy is always limited by the basic, unfulfilled requirements of his human heart.
Conclusion: the existential burden of the ordinary. Denji's tragedy is a devastating philosophical commentary on the modern search for fulfillment. His simple desires, to eat, to sleep, to feel affection, are universally relatable, yet they are perpetually placed out of reach by the absurdity and violence of his world. Chainsaw Man reveals a brutal truth. In an unstable, chaotic universe, achieving the ordinary is an existential burden far heavier than fighting a cosmic demon. His journey forces the audience to confront the vast privilege inherent in a stable life. Denji doesn't yearn for wealth or power, he yearns for the right to uncomplicated existence. His failure to attain it, despite possessing world-ending power, reveals the cruel irony that true human happiness is often found in the things that cannot be bought, contracted, or chainsawed into submission. Ultimately, Denji's life is a constant, messy, and bloody fight for his right to be human. He is the reluctant hero who exposes the moral bankruptcy of a world that forces its most powerful individual to fight for the bare minimum of dignity and comfort. His enduring struggle is a profound, messy testament to the enduring, heartbreaking value of the ordinary life. The final philosophical takeaway is this: Denji, the ultimate tool of fear and destruction, is perpetually striving to be the ultimate expression of unthreatened humanity. His tragedy is our mirror, reminding us that the greatest freedom we possess is the quiet, often unacknowledged ability to simply exist, want, and connect without a contract.
Moreover, Denji's life acts as a continuous refutation of the classic hero's journey. In traditional narratives, suffering leads to wisdom and self-actualization. For Denji, suffering only leads to deeper trauma and a cyclical, desperate attempt to reclaim a stolen childhood. He subverts the expectation that great power comes with great responsibility, showing instead that great power often comes with great utility, the responsibility to others, not to the self. His lack of intellectual sophistication makes his yearning all the more pure and consequently all the more tragic when repeatedly dashed by the cunning manipulations of the world's intelligentsia. This relentless denial of his simplest desires forces the profound realization that perhaps the greatest victory Denji could ever achieve wouldn't be saving the world, but successfully maintaining his ability to feel Denji-like happiness, a feeling disconnected from any contract or fear. His pursuit is not just a fight against devils, it is a desperate ongoing fight against nihilism, proving that even when one is defined by the terror of others, the human spirit continues to chase the beautiful, mundane light of a warm breakfast and a shared laugh. Denji's story challenges us. What simple, essential human desire are you currently sacrificing for a more complicated external goal? Let us know in the comments below, what is the one ordinary thing that you value most in your own life? If Denji's tragic fight for normalcy resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to Philosophagots for more deep dives into the philosophy of manga and anime.